It's been a couple of days since the National Assembly found itself embroiled in a contentious debate over the acquisition of luxury vehicles for its 469 members, and this has sparked so much controversy. So tonight we'll be setting the record straight as to whether or not there are any justifications to the purchase of these vehicles. And joining us for proper insight into that matter is Special Advisor to the Senate President on Media and Publicity, Honorable Eseme. Eyiboh. Thank you so much for joining us, Honorable. Always a pleasure having you on Politics Tonight.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me an opportunity again to be able to go into this public enlightenment. Thank you.
All right, so before we go on, Honorable Eyiboh is a former member of the House of Representatives. So, so much to discuss this evening, and perhaps for you, so much to defend. But let's start with how the 10th National Assembly is faring under the leadership of your principal, Senator Godswill Akpabio. It's been 5 months. How would you describe the journey of the Senate so far?
Well, I think I have to bring this to the fore, regardless of the modesty of my principal, the president of the 10th Senate. Recently, he was just inaugurated on the 13th of June, but as we speak now, he has been able to launch Nigeria into the political landscape. Just last week, in faraway Rwanda, Angola, Nigeria has not been a member of the Executive Committee of the International Parliamentary Union. Last Nigeria was a member was in 1964, 59 years ago. But just last week, he was elected into the Global Executive Committee of the International Parliamentary Union. International Parliamentary Union is a 79-nation legislative powerhouse where diplomacy and, of course, constructive legislative engagement take place. So, for Nigeria to now emerge in a time like this, we are trying to resuscitate. The present government is talking about renewed hope. I am thinking, as well as I think you should, that the emergence of the Senate President, Senator Godswill Akpabio, as a member of that global committee of the International Parliamentary Union is a good omen, is a renewed hope in itself that Nigeria has now taken its rightful place in the Committee of Nations, Democratic Nations. So that is a very huge and a very big plus. Even before, a week before that election in Angola, the Senate engaged themselves in a retreat where on the issue of tax reforms and tax reform generally, and of course, that was able to open the vistas, to the issues of various legislations, weak ones, and those anticipated ones that will help to culminate and provide the plank where the present government will be able to launch the renewed hope. And that they have done that carefully by making sure that every senator is empowered, every senator is equipped, every senator is up and doing to that respect. So that with other plethora of successes that are recorded within the past few months since the inauguration is an indication that Nigeria has come of age and that we are now having a legislature of our dreams, and that is coming up to enhance. That will not only enhance the jurisprudence of our democracy, it will go further to strengthen that institution. Because all what we have been saying, we have been looking forward to have a very strong institution instead of strong men. So there has been a reverse engagement now, positively though, that has brought us to where we are now.
So I know one of the key items on the agenda of the 10th Senate is smooth legislative-executive relationship to foster development. How well will you say this has been pursued?
Well, if you see the retreat, the first was leadership retreat, then the one of the entire Senate. And in that retreat of the entire Senate, the Speaker of the House of Representatives was there, the Chief of Staff, the Mr. President was there, the Minister for Finance was also there. So if you look at the composition of the discussants, the composition of the keynote presenter, and those in attendance, it will suggest to you that there is a constructive and very robust relationship between the executive and the legislature. That is not to mean that there has been a compromise within the principles of separation of powers, checks and balances. No, because they are now trying to depart from the past of needless activism to now begin to look at what will benefit Nigerians more. And the present Senate are engaging, they are actualizing that hope. They have renewed the legislative hope, of the Nigerian people by various engagement, especially the 8-point agenda of the Senate during that retreat.
Right, so I know we've talked about this once or twice, but with recent developments, it became imperative for us to talk about these fears. As some Nigerians express fear that developments may suffer in the country if the Senate panders too much to the executive. How will you react to this?
Well, I don't know. It's the issue of perception. The average Nigerians have had very poor perception of the National Assembly, particularly the Senate, just because they don't understand what is going on there. But I can tell you, Jumoke, and it's important you know this, the only problem of the Senate, of the National Assembly, is that they don't inform as much as they are performing. If they were to match their performance with their information management, I think most of these perception issues will have been minimized. So the average Nigerian now, what we are trying to do now in essence is to bring up most of these things to the fore. For example, the Senate President of Nigerian, the President of the Nigerian Senate, to have been elected into the 79 nation International Parliamentary Union, a position Nigeria has, the last Nigeria had was 1964. That should be a plus for an average Nigerian. That should be a cause. That is more or less like diplomatic Nobel laureate. That is also, in my opinion, and I want to think you will buy into it, something that Nigeria is supposed to celebrate, because by now it has expanded, our relationship with other nations. We are being seen differently today, which is a plus for the average Nigerian. Everywhere you go now, you have Nigerians. If you go to that Angola, so many Nigerians are there. They celebrated the streets and the party halls in Angola. Nigerians were celebrating. So something like that should be able to encourage an average Nigerian that there is hope. We are lucky to have this kind of Senate, the 10th Senate we are having today, because it's populated by men and women who understand the gamut of national planning, who understand what growth and opportunities and prosperity is all about. So with time, once we are able to match information with performance, then we will be able to get there. It's a gradual process. It's a project.
So you talked about perception. Honorable Eyiboh, I'm sure you wouldn't blame Nigerians for whatever perception they have of the federal lawmakers. But what is the 10th National Assembly doing to change that perception?
For example, now, like I've just told you now, it's not about, the average Nigerians have not done anything wrong for the poor perception. The poor perception originally, and as it were, originates from lack of information. So that's why I am saying that the only problem of the Senate, the National Assembly as we speak, is the inability to match the high performance, with information management. Because when you perform without informing, the people you are expected to inform who are not aware of your performance will not live in darkness, and they can have any opinion they intend to have. But when once a consistent and a constant information strategy to be able to bring the people to buy into what that is doing, then the issue of the let me give you an example. As we speak today, majority of the people in the north and majority of the people in the south and southeast and southwest, as an example now, if you could imagine if we were to have language channels where we said every Monday we let the people who are Eyiboh speaking or Yoruba speaking or Hausa speaking, to understand what is going on in the National Assembly, most of the perception management issues will have been taken care of. So we are talking about communication now. And this communication is very important. It has to be consistent. though it is generic, but to the extent that every person, every audience, every person with the right to know should be able to know, because the senators are representatives of the people. The people have the right to know what the senators are doing. And this has to be done through a lot of a multi-dimensional communication strategy. We must deepen our strategy and engage, our audience.
All right. So the Senate recently had its retreat. What are the benefits and takeaways from that retreat?
Well, I can tell you that most of the knowledge on the issue of national development, the knowledge on the financial position and various strategies the executive may be engaged in the days ahead is now common. And so it also provides as the basis for research for the senators, because they are more informed now of various legislative issues. So the legislative agenda must have been strengthened and reformed by that retreat. Coming out of that retreat and coming out of that retreat, with the 8 points resolutions, every senator is now well equipped because the attendance was very robust. They all attended. The keynote speakers and the panelists and discussants were top notch. So they were able to break everything down. So if you are a lawyer, you will understand the language of finance. If you are a medical doctor, you will understand the language of the legislature. So the gamut of the entire retreat was able to enrich not only the senators individually, it threw up the issue of institutional strength. So now, as we speak, the outcome of that particular retreat has been able to improve, has been able to scale up, has been able to benefit the senators as much as the issue of the institutional integrity.
So, Senate President Godswill Akpabio recently got elected into the Global Executive Committee of 189 Nation International Parliamentary Union. Why is this election so significant for the Senate and Nigeria?
Well, first, for Nigeria not being part of the International Parliamentary Union since 1964 is to give you the import of globalization in terms of international politics. Because most nations now are shifting to democracy. And because democratic nations are always using the avenue of such a union to be able to engage themselves into international diplomacy. People no longer fight wars now with bayonets or with submarines. They are now fighting wars with knowledge. They are fighting war with strategic planning and all of that. So diplomacy is very key to any nation. Nigeria has actually been living as a child who has been bitten by the rain. But today, we have been taken out of that rain. If you see water coming out of our eyes, we have been able to clean it. Every country now is respecting us. Could you imagine in a union, international parliamentary union of 179 nations, and Nigeria being elected into its global executive committee, meaning that no decision is going to be taken without the consideration of Nigeria, and various steps that Nigeria is taking to improve, the well-being of its citizens is not going to be of global concern. And of course, Nigeria being a democratic nation, so our democratic processes and of course the agenda, the legislative agenda, is also going to be an issue of global concern. And members countries like Nigeria will benefit elaborately from this robust engagement. So the Nigerian citizen is going to be more respected than before. Nigeria is going to be reckoned with. Our parliament is not going to be seen as a parliament struggling in democracy. They will see the Nigerian Senate, the Nigerian parliament, as a very robust and enriched democratic institution. And that, of course, the benefit of it is what you cannot quantify. But if you ask me, there was a time, and in some countries, Nigerians were having it difficult to even get visa to go to. That is at the level of diplomacy. But right this moment, the way Nigeria is now, the strength and the authority we have commanded by the election of the Senate president has opened the door, not the window, for an average Nigerian to feel free and be respected any way he finds himself within Committee of Nations.
Back to the issue of perception. I mean, tonight we've talked about how the Senate is going about its engagement with citizens and oversight duties. Also, we've talked about how the Senate is pursuing smooth legislative-executive relation to foster development. But I'm curious, the National Assembly is seen by many as a corrupt and frivolous institution. How is the current leadership changing this perception?
Well, I can let you be aware that when you are talking about leadership, you are talking about a responsibility that has to be earned. The current leadership, first, has proven itself as being a trustworthy leadership through the process of the election of his presiding officers. In the annals of Nigerian history, there is no time that such process has been so credible, so transparent, so competitive, so free, from interferences, encumbrances and interferences. There has been no time like that in our annals. But they set that foundation of honesty and transparency to show that they want to demonstrate leadership. And this leadership at various times have been demonstrated further under the watch of Godswill Akpabio, Senator Godswill Akpabio. For example, some years ago, when they came to increase, when they brought a proposal for the increase of electricity tariff to 45%, they would have given money to committees, given money to individuals. When was you see the Senate president or you see, that ends it. But in this case, the electricity companies were openly engaged. And they said, no, that Nigeria should not be strangulated, that they should allow Nigerians to breathe by not carrying every burden, even in a regime of withdrawal of fuel subsidy. Nigerians should not be treated otherwise, that increase should not take place. That was a responsible and accountable leadership the Senate demonstrated. And most times, you will hear strike in this country running into 3 months, 2 months, 1 month, and all of that. The first effort, it wasn't even the issue of just the executive or the presidency, but the Senate took steps to also engage National Association of Resident Doctors, Nigerian Labour Congress. They have done that, and they did it successfully, and the people even commended the Senate for doing that. That is still a very strong point in the management of its image. And most of the activities, including even the screening of ministers, we used to live in a cubicle where everybody is saying that when you want to, before a minister is cleared, he's going to pay 20 million and all of that. But this particular case, out of 40 ministers, 38 were screened. The other 2 were dropped, which was very strange. That is a demonstration of transparency. That's a demonstration of a group of people who are really willing and, of course, participating in uplifting, the development psychology of this country into the Renew Hope agenda. So this particular Senate, I can bet you with my heart, I'm not a member of the Senate. It's not corrupt. It's transparent. It's working hard. And, of course, one thing I must let us also be aware is that there are 2 leadership in National Assembly, the political leadership and the bureaucracy. The bureaucracy leadership is headed by the clerk of the National Assembly. Then the political leadership is headed by the president of the Senate. So when they said National Assembly, too many persons and too many institutions are involved. You have the National Institute of Democratic and Legislative Studies. You have the National Assembly Budget and Research. You also have National Assembly Service Commission. These are all institutions within the National Assembly that the public possibly may not be aware. So when you begin to look at that, is the issue of perception. And what they are doing today, they are also taking steps through the constitution of very strong committee on media and public affairs to be able to participate in an honest enlightenment and the engagement of stakeholders. I can assure you.
All right. Honorable Eyiboh, let's get to the most important aspect of our conversation for tonight. The National Assembly is facing criticisms over purchase of 109 2023 model of Toyota Land Cruiser for senators and 2023 Toyota Prado for 360 members of the House of Representatives. Is this action justified?
Well, when it comes to, in answering that question honestly, I need to let you be aware of something. Since 2003 or thereabout, the National Assembly have been running a budget of 150 billion since then. And recently, I think 2019, they brought it down from 150 to 130. And if you look at that, the question now is, what has increased that there is that reduction? The House of Representatives are 360, the Senate are 109. Now, a lot of people are just seeing the expenditure of the National Assembly within the purview of the 109 senators and 360 members. That's not correct. There is still National Institute of Legislative and Democratic Studies. That is also helping in educating our public. It's an institution that we all know. They are training, they are involved in training, strategic human capacity development for most and if not all the institutions in this country. They are also under National Assembly. You also have like the research and the budget. And you also have, like I said, the National Assembly Service Commission. So the bureaucracy of the National Assembly, that is headed by the clerk of the National Assembly, is involved in a lot of administrative issues, including procurement, including engineering, including any other thing you would think of within the purview of administrative responsibilities. They do all of that. So no senator or no senator or no member of the House of Representatives has ever been given any money to go and buy any vehicle. And they have never bought vehicle. So the purchase, procurement of the vehicle, procurement of anything, including office, stationaries, and all of that, is the responsibility of the National Assembly, bureaucracy. And when they look at the file need, they do requisition. They do requisition, and there is a standard procurement process in the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And they follow that procurement process and the need, the felt need of each of the departments. So it happens in every section both in national and subnational. That happens. So it sounds big, quite all right, for you to hear that 360 members are being given vehicles by the bureaucracy, or 109. It sounds huge. But if we want to juxtapose that amount, that number of vehicles and productivity, that is where the issue of poor perception comes in. Because the productivity of the National Assembly, that is the political wing, which is, of course, the issue of legislation, the issue of oversight and all of that, is so huge and intangible that it's difficult for anybody to now say this is the cause of that productivity. But I can tell you honestly and sincerely that if anybody wants to know how much is the real cost of the vehicle, the National Assembly is very open. The bureaucracy, the process of the tender, the process of the award of the contract, when all of that is concluded, then they will take inventory of the total number of members and the total number of senators. And this will be distributed within, of course, the prescription or the allowances, of the civil service rule. So there is no hide and seek here.
So, Honorable Eseme, the summary of everything you've said is that these are official vehicles. And I'm sure, many Nigerians have described the purchase of these vehicles as insensitive and provocative, in a difficult season. And I mean, you would agree with me that as lawmakers, there must be some sense of responsibility, sensibility, and responsibility. But let's speak to the issue of responsibility. I mean, at a time when President Tinubu is doing all he can to revive the economy of this country, at a time when everyone is clamoring for reduced cost of governance, at a time when we're saying, look, we need to start buying what we produce and even produce more. Why are lawmakers doing otherwise?
I have stated this clearly to you, Jumoke. I have said that the issue of the procurement, the administrative, the requisition, all the administrative processes leading to the purchase of any item, including vehicles, is done by the bureaucracy. And the bureaucracy are not forming the standard. It is a standard in the public service of Nigeria. It is a standard they use to procure vehicles for the new ministers. It's a standard they use in procuring vehicles for directors and all of that in ministries, departments, and agencies of government. So no lawmaker, I repeat, no lawmaker. Take my words, Jumoke. I believe you and I believe in your concern, and I'm telling you that members of the Senate, particularly Senate and House of Representatives, are as sensitive as as sensitive as what they are trying to do now to begin to renew the hope of Nigerians. And while we are talking, I also want to advise that it is important, the issue of procurement. These issues are issues which, of course, this issue touches on the issue of corruption and all of that. So if anybody feels that there has been an infringement, he has the liberty to be able to address any of the agencies. You have it in the subnational. The executive, on May 29, the new government came in to all the states of the federation. You know, the new State House of Assembly came into all the state houses of assembly. And all those people have been provided with working tools in our respective states. So one would naturally expect that while we allow these institutions to work unimpeded, we should be able to do the issue of audit, representative audit, whereby I'm going to be held responsible and asked by my people what really happened. I should be able to account my representation. But when we use a generic approach to be able to look at this, it is as unfair as the word insensitive in that respect. So I am thinking that we should be able to encourage these senators, House of Reps members, just as we are encouraging members of the State House of Assembly and Federal Executive Council members, that look, yes, we are spending so much on you, but please do the right thing. These are the standard and the results we are expecting. So we begin to eyemark, these representations.
Honorable, so I hear that it is the standard. I mean, blame it on procurement, on bureaucracy. And some of the lawmakers defended this with reasons like it's not a new thing. But I mean, why can't the National Assembly bring about a change in the way things are done, especially with how the country is at the moment?
Now, I'm sure you are also aware too that there are extant rules in the public service. For example, if you are on consolidated salary, they may not give you a vehicle. You know, you buy your vehicle and use, or if you want to go for official duty and all of, if you are on consolidated. And you are also aware too that there are some instances, where these things, if a lawmaker comes to tell you that there is no fuse about it, there is nothing wrong about it, I think he's expressing his personal opinion. But what I am telling you now, what I'm saying is for the purposes of enlightenment and purposes of buying the people into the activities of the National Assembly so that they will be able to understand this more. That National Assembly is not, apart from those lawmakers, after 4 years or thereabout, there are some directors. Do you have permanent secretaries in the National Assembly? In the National Assembly bureaucracy, you have permanent secretaries, you have directors. And those people, they have the standard of the allowances, what is to be given to them. You can't take it away from them. So if the only thing anybody will complain, if you come out to say that there has been an infringement on the procurement process of the purchase of this vehicle or that item, the person has a right under our laws, to approach the National Assembly. In this case, it's not a lawmaker, because the lawmaker never participated in both the need, the requisition, or the tender, or the qualification, or the payment, or the allocation. No lawmaker, including Senate and House of Rep, is involved in it. It's purely administrative and within the bureaucracy.